Okay, I am Susie Terrell with the La Center Historical Museum. Today is May 10th, and I am here chatting with Mr. Jack Wells of La Center. So, we're going to be talking a little bit about his background and how he came to Clark County. So, Jack, what would you like to share with us?
Well, I was born in Hood River, Oregon on January 21st, 1950. At that time, my parents lived in White Salmon, Washington, which was across the bridge from Hood River. And so for the first, I guess, 6 school years of my life, I lived in White Salmon, went to school there up through the 6th grade. My dad was, at that time, or at the time of my birth, a logger. He worked for a small logging company, and also, while we were in White Salmon, he worked in a sawmill. And growing up there, I had cousins who also lived in the White Salmon, Beezy Corners area, also up through Trout Lake, Washington. So I was able to spend a lot of time with cousins growing up. My grandma and grandpa Wells lived in a little community just north of White Salmon called Beezy Corners. And so we got to spend a lot of time with grandma and grandpa.
Nice.
And just basically grew up, at least up to the 6th grade, learned how to fish in the various creeks and canals. I remember one creek specifically, it's called Rattlesnake Creek. We call it Crick, Rattlesnake Crick, that had a lot of really nice native trout in it. And so we'd fish quite a bit, and I and my cousins and sisters would walk along the roads and pick up pop bottles and beer bottles, and you could take them to the back door of the local tavern and sell them for 1 cent, 3 cents, whatever, and then we go to the store and buy some penny candy or whatever, and so up through the 6th grade, that's where we lived. And I don't know what happened to my dad's job at the sawmill, but maybe nothing, but he was offered a job at the plywood mill in Salachi Prairie up in the Amboy area. And so he took the job, and that brought us from White Salmon to La Center in 1962.
Okay.
And initially we moved into a rental house up in Highland, and we lived there. I think we moved to La Center in June of 62. I think it was shortly before Marilyn Monroe committed suicide, somewhere in that area. I remember the headlines. But anyway, we lived in Highland, and then the Columbus Day storm hit. And in our home there, of course it was a rental home, but that was our home. The wind blew out almost all the windows.
Oh my.
Blew down fruit trees, and I remember it seemed kind of strange because I guess the wind was coming under the floor, and we had linoleum on the floor, and it raised up off the floor. Like it seems like it was like 3 feet, but it was probably 6 inches, But you could walk on it and it would just push down like this. Well, the wind kept getting worse and worse and worse, and the windows were being blown out and whatnot. And so my folks decided we should ride it out in the car.
Okay.
So they got I and my three sisters together, and we got out to the car, and I remember it just was in the car, and it was dark, and the car was just rocking back and forth, rocking back and forth. Didn't do any damage to the car or anything, but it was just
Nothing
scary.
fell on the car.
No, no, but we could see the fruit trees and whatnot blowing over and whatnot. But anyway, the house was inhabitable from that point. I mean, there were no windows, and I think probably, if I remember right, part of the roof blew off and whatnot. So we moved. I don't know how my folks connected with. There was a couple that owned the Texaco station right here, that on the corner was a Texaco station where Roxanne and Ron live right there, just across from the bakery. There was a Texaco station, service station there. And this couple, older couple, Charlie and Meddy Sheldon, ran they owned the Texaco station. And they also owned this little house right behind us. And somehow, some way, my parents and they hooked up, and my parents wound up buying this little house. And so we moved from Highland into this little house. And actually, the house that Meddy and Charlie lived in was originally a hospital here in La Center. And I have an uncle who was born in this hospital.
Really?
Yeah, back in the early 40s.
The little house that's there on the corner with the rock, I think there's a big rock front porch or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that was a hospital.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
She
and-
was a midwife, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Charlie was quite a drinker, and of course we kids, not my sisters, they were prim and proper, but some of us boys, we knew where Charlie hid his whiskey bottle in his truck, because we'd see him come out of the house, and I guess he didn't want Meddy to know he was drinking or something. But anyway, he'd come out of the house and go around to his pickup and pull his whiskey bottle out and take a drink or two out of that. And I shouldn't say this, but once in a great while, me and my couple friends would get into his little whiskey bottle. But anyway, also they had a monkey, and it was a little spider monkey, I guess, and its name was Skippy. And Skippy liked those little worm, or they're bugs, I guess, that when you touch them, they'd roll up.
Oh,
You know, the little,
Yeah.
I don't know what, I thought I knew the name of the bug, but I probably did, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, Skippy loved those bugs. And so on occasion, I'd look for some bugs and take them down for Skippy, and Skippy'd reach through its little cage and get the bugs and crunch, 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 you know. So anyway, but throughout those years, from 62 to 68, of course, I went to La Center School, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th grades. And when I was 15, I got a job at Ano's Garage, which is now, as I recall, Chip's Casino.
Oh, okay.
That was Ano's Garage, and he hired me to pump gas and taught me how to fix flats, and so I pumped gas and washed windows, car windows, and checked oil and stuff like that, because there was no self-service
Right.
back then. It was all, you know,
Yeah.
you
You
pull
got
up.
the full thing.
Yes, the full meal
Yeah.
deal. And so I worked at Ano's Garage when I was 15, 16, 17. And after I graduated from high school, within a month, I got a job up at the plywood mill at Salatchi Prairie. That was in, I think, either the end of June, 1st of July of 68. And then shortly after that, I don't know, my dad got a job offer in Battleground for this company called Bigger and Better Poultry.
Uh-huh.
And it was a chicken processing plant. And they would actually haul in live chickens and hang them up on racks and cut their throat and let them bleed, and then they process them out to packaged fryers, from live chickens to ready to go to the grocery store. So they moved to Battleground, and so I moved to a little apartment in Amboy, and I stayed there for several months, but I didn't like having to cook for myself and make my lunches and all that moms do. And so they had an extra bedroom at the house in Battleground, so I moved into Battleground with them. And then I continued to work at the plywood mill, and then in August of 69, I got my draft notice. And so I went to Fort Lewis for basic training, and then just marched across the parade field to an advanced infantry unit for advanced infantry training. And so I went through that for 8 or 9 weeks, and then I got a 5-day leave, and then I went to a place called Oakland Army Base. It wasn't Fort Ord, California or whatever. It was called Oakland Army Base, and it was a processing place for service members, Army, leaving for Vietnam or returning from Vietnam. So I was processed through there. And then I was there for 4, 5, 6 days, and finally they put us on a plane from Travis Air Force Base, and we flew to Alaska and refueled, and then from Alaska to some air base in Japan and refueled, and then from Japan into Bien Hoa, South Vietnam. And
That had to have been pretty scary.
Strangely enough, it wasn't. I think that through Army training and just being young and feeling invincible, or when you're young, you're 19 years old, the last thing you think about is dying. And I think I was reading somewhere some time ago where that's how the military get young people to go to war like that, because they're young, they're invincible, they're trainable, they're all of those things. And so anyway, they put us on buses there. It was after midnight when we landed, pitch black. As we landed, they turned all the lights off in the aircraft and whatnot. So you're kind of looking out the window and you could see like bare light bulbs here and there down below, but you really couldn't see anything because it was pitch black. And then we landed and they opened up the door to let us out, and it was like, oh man, it was like a blast furnace. And strangely enough, the last 7 days of our infantry training in Washington was at the base of Mount Rainier, and they had built a simulated Viet Cong village at the base of Mount Rainier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, they built tunnels, they built
Oh,
hooches, they built prisoner of war camps. I mean, it was like, at the time it
yeah.
was just simulated, but
I had no idea they did all that.
yeah, it was quite the deal. But the reason I bring that up is because it was December, and we had freezing rain, we had snow. I mean, it was so cold. I remember, you have the old zipper fatigues, and it was so cold. My hands were so cold. When I got my zipper down, my fingers wouldn't work to pull it back up. I mean, that's how cold it was. And we couldn't have fires. And so there was no way to warm up. You just, your sleeping bag got wet, and it was miserable. And then, 10 days later, I'm getting off the plane in South Vietnam, and it's like blast furnace, the
Wow.
hottest heat I have ever felt. I'll never forget that. But anyway, got
What a
off the
difference.
plane. Yeah, got off the plane, and they put us in buses. And one thing I noticed real quick about the buses is all the windows had metal bars over them, so they couldn't, throw a hand grenade through your window
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that. And that was kind of a realization that, well, there could be people here that would hurt you if they could, that type of thing. And of course, we're escorted. The front of our little convoy is escorted by armored personnel carriers and whatnot, and so you're going down these village streets, and there's no activity, there's nobody moving or anything. It's just kind of a weird situation compared to what you're used to in the United States,
Right.
And so anyway, we got to what they called 90th Replacement Company, and that's where everybody coming into that particular area of South Vietnam were processed in, and they determined from there what units you were going to go to, what you were going to be assigned, or what unit and where you were going to be assigned. And as my luck would have it, I mean, we were in the air for like 20 hours or something like that, and I think it took us 22 hours from Travis Air Force Base in California to land in Vietnam, and 20 hours actual in the air, but an hour in Alaska and an hour in Japan to refuel. But anyway, somehow, some way, luck of the draw for me, I got stuck with KP as soon as we got off the bus. And of course, that meant no rest. I mean, you just started working in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted. Gosh, I was exhausted. And I decided I needed to go to the bathroom. So I asked the cook, whoever was in charge of us, I said, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. He said, well, get right back. And so I went to the bathroom, and after I went to the bathroom, I thought, I'm just going to go lay down for just a second. I mean, I just had to be able to close my eyes, and I fell asleep. And next thing I know, I'm woke up by two MPs, military policemen, shining flashlights in my eyes, and wanted to know who I was, and so I told them, and so anyway, they told me I had to meet with the company commander the next morning. First, they told me to get your ass back to the mess hall, but So I did. Well, unfortunately for me, while I was asleep, somebody had come into the mess hall and taken their radio.
Oh.
And because I was the only one gone,
Oh.
oh, well, there it is,
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have anything to do with the radio, but anyway, I had to report to the commander the next morning, and so he chewed me up one side and down the other, and basically told me what a low life I am, and but anyway, what had happened, um, the the day shift cooks or whatever were having a party that night. They came in and got the radio or the whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
Well, the night shift didn't know that, and so they assumed that it had been stolen.
Sure.
So they do a head count in the mess hall, and Wells is missing. So there's
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I survived that. It was like, oh gosh, it was just kind of what next kind
Yeah.
of thing. Just got there and
You
get
just
accused
barely,
of,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, they called all the new people cherry boys, and I mean, welcome to Vietnam,
Yeah.
cherry boy, accused of stealing their stupid radio or whatever it was, but anyway, a couple days later, my name was finally called, and I was called for the 1st Infantry Division in Lai Khe, and I thought, oh, finally, get out of here. It just wasn't a good place, and I wasn't even thinking about, well, if I'm going to the 1st Infantry Division in Lai Khe, the crap's going to hit the fan pretty quick, I mean, it finally dawned on me that this is the real deal now. That this is what I was trained for, and all this stuff. Well, they told me to go get your duffel bag, and there'll be a deuce and a half here in about half hour, 45 minutes to pick you up and take you to Lai Khe. And so I got my stuff, and I went to the sign that said the unit, 1st Infantry, and I waited, and the deuce and a half came, and the guy had a roster of names, and so he called out all the names except for mine, and I said, hey, I'm supposed to be on, they call me for 1st Infantry Division. He said, I don't have your name, so I can't take you. And I thought, oh, crap. So anyway, after they called all the names, they posted on this bulletin board thing all of the rosters for the different units. And so I went over there to look and see how my name couldn't have been on that roster, because they called me specifically and called my name. And so I looked over the 1st Infantry Division, I wasn't on there. And I looked at all the other infantry divisions, I wasn't on any of those. And I found my name on this something, I don't remember the name of the unit, but it was some personnel services unit or something. And so I found their sign, and I went to their sign, and I don't remember how long it was after that, but this little quarter-ton pickup-like thing with a canvas top on it pulled up, and he had my name on his roster. And so I got in there and I went, and for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know what the circumstances were, but I was switched from a basic infantryman to a heavy truck driver. And I had never driven a truck, never nothing. I mean, these were like semi
Right.
trucks. These were not little pickups like I have, 18 gears and all
Oh
this other
my.
stuff. And so anyway, um, after they processed me through there, they took me to this transportation unit and checked me into the first sergeant, and the next day we were in the motor pool for our first company formation, and the our CO was telling us that the war is winding down, the war is this, the war is that, and all of a sudden here comes the mortars, and the mortars are hitting our
Oh
motor pool
my
and
gosh.
and slamming here and there, and we bunch of us ran for this ditch, and you try to get down, you try to get
Yeah.
as low as you can, and they lobbed in probably a half a dozen mortars on our motor
Oh
pool, and
my.
and I thought, wow, I guess the war is over, or winding down, and of
Right.
course it was. This was in
Yeah.
January of 1970, and it was winding down. But anyway,
But not for you, right
not at that point in
overhead.
time. But anyway, I had like 3 or 4 days of um, training on the truck,
Oh, okay.
and learning how to shift it, how to make it go forward, make it go backwards. I had to learn to hook up 36 to 40 foot trailers and pull those, back them up, turn them around, everything that you needed to do to be a truck driver.
Hmm.
And I think I was training for 3 or 4 days. Um, and then I think on the fifth day, I had to show the sergeant that I was proficient enough that he could sign me off and give me a military driver's license for heavy truck.
Uh-huh.
And so I was able to do that, but I really wasn't proficient. It was just like, give him a license, and let's get this over with. And the very next day we were setting up. All the trucks were lining up to go on my first convoy, and the lieutenant that was going to lead the convoy, he's coming up toward my truck, and he's going like this.
Oh.
I didn't know what he meant.
Uh-huh.
Well, what he was telling me is turn my lights on.
Oh.
I didn't
Oh.
know how.
Oh.
So anyway, he jumps up on the side of my truck, and he flips these things around and puts my lights on. And I'm thinking, in his mind, he's probably thinking, what in the hell did they give me this piece of shit for?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Really.
I didn't have a clue. But anyway, I survived, and so I drove heavy truck in convoys. I drove over 20,000 miles
Oh.
in 14 months. I extended for 63 days over there. Your normal rotation was 12 months.
Uh-huh.
I extended for 63 days to get a 5 month early out of the Army. When I left there, I wanted to be out. I didn't want to have to go to a stateside unit or whatever. So I volunteered to stay an extra 63 days. So in 14 months and 5 days, I drove over 20,000 miles.
Wow.
And that's a lot of miles when you average 25 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're not cruising down freeways at 55 or 70 or whatever. But so anyway, I kind of view the Army's decision to, no matter what the reason was, to take me out of the infantry and put me in as a heavy truck driver, more than likely saved my life.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Right.
you don't know.
When you were driving, were you transporting men or equipment or both?
No men. I hauled everything from beer to bombs,
Okay.
ammo, napalm bombs, pallets of beer, food, clothes, everything that other units needed to resupply. And
That didn't exactly put you out of harm's way.
oh
I
no,
mean, oh
we had to
my.
drive through areas that were less than desirable, and it was common knowledge that oftentimes we would get escorts by ARVN, the Vietnamese army, and we knew if they refused to go to escort us that it was not going to be a fun place to be. And they didn't do that all that often, but once in a while they'd refuse. And so, it was what it was. You just dealt with it. And our job was to keep going. If somebody, got shot at or blown up or whatever, you're to the extent your convoy can keep going, you go. You want to get out of that area, and
Right.
so my luck held. I just
Yeah.
I'm home. I got you know
Wow.
I didn't get shot. I didn't get blown up. I didn't many times in the middle of the night you'd have to jump up and try to get to a bunker, because of the mortars and the rockets and stuff like that. Our company area was real close to a huge, they said it was one of the largest ammo dumps in the world. And so the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese would try to hit that dump, try to blow up ammo and stuff like that. And so, but anyway, I was there for 14 months, and I came home, and my folks still lived in Battleground. And so I moved back home and went back to work at the plywood mill. That's where I was working when I got drafted. And
Jack, I'm going to stop you
Okay.
there.
made it home, and a week after getting home, I went back to work up at the plywood mill, because the law at that time was, if you got drafted, and I think it may have even applied to those who enlisted for X number of years. I think the limit was like 3 years. Your seniority continued while you were gone, and they had to give you your job back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So when I got home, I went back to work 5 days later, and it was too soon. I was not I was not prepared to be responsible with that mentally. I was struggling, and some of the guys at the plywood mill were not, they weren't sympathetic to your situation that you'd been in, and not long ago been in. And I remember one guy in particular that you could the forklifts, you could run them and run them and run them and turn the key off and turn the key back on, and it would backfire. And it would just
Oh,
scare me to
yeah.
death. You know, I mean, it was like
You're
something
under
had,
fire.
yeah, something
Yeah.
had just exploded, you know, and things like that. And it was very difficult. And I found myself doing a lot of drinking and way too much drinking. And I began to miss work. And because I'd get drunk. I was working swing shift, and I'd get drunk during the day, and then either call in sick or just not show up or whatever. And not long after that, the mill superintendent called me in, and he said, "I don't know what's going on, but you need to get it straightened out, or you're not going to have a job." And so I didn't stop drinking, but I stopped missing work because of it. And so anyway, I survived that part. One of the bad things about our situation, having been in Vietnam, was one day you're in Vietnam and the next day you're not, and there was no debrief, no help of any kind with
Right.
stress or trauma or any of those things. It was like we flew in, and I remember, I'm kind of regressing a little bit, but I remember getting off the plane in California, and they took us through this area that had a big cyclone fence, and over the fence was like a half roof. It was kind of, fence went up, and then there was a roof over it. There were protesters on the other side of the cyclone fence, screaming and yelling and just having a fit over us, and that type of thing. And I remember from Oakland Army Base, I took a taxi to the airport in San Francisco to fly home, and the taxi driver said, "Get out of that uniform as soon as you can get out of that uniform." He said, "You don't want to be wearing that uniform around here."
Wow.
And because they gave us a brand new dress uniform, green and whatnot. Look, I was proud of it.
Sure.
I didn't think anything about being a bad person or whatever. We didn't get a whole lot of news over there. It was just Armed Forces radio station,
Sure.
Army Times or whatever. There was not I didn't have a newspaper sent to me or anything, so I really didn't know other than just hit and miss. But anyway, I survived the return home, and then I worked at the plywood mill from 1971 when I got home until 1974. And a friend of mine had gone to work at the jail at the sheriff's office. And so he said, "Hey, you need to take the test and come to work in the jail." He said, "It's a blast. You'll love it." And so anyway, they were testing for, then they called it jailer. Now they call it corrections deputy. But anyway, I took the test, and I did very well on the test. And I took the test in January of 74, and I got hired May 1 of 74, and so I started working in the jail, and I worked in the jail from May 1, 74 to December of 2006.
Okay.
And 32 and a half years or something like
That's a
that.
while.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, in October of 71, I got married the first time. And my then wife and I moved and lived in this house right behind us here. And so we lived there for several years. And then when I got, because I was then working in Vancouver, we thought, well, we'd move closer to work. And so we rented a place in Vancouver, and we lived in Vancouver for 6, 7 years. And then we got divorced in 1984. And so I stayed in Vancouver until 1989. And I bought then in 89, I bought this little house from my parents. And so I moved back to La Center in 89. And so I've been back here since 1989. And in 1991, I decided to run for mayor of La Center. And there was a gentleman named Chuck Smith who was running, and so he and I battled it out for the privilege of being La Center mayor. And I hadn't been involved in La Center politics at all. My initial motivation was Chuck was running unopposed. And I have this thought process that when people run unopposed, they have a tendency to develop their own agendas, and because they're not threatened by possibly competition or that type of thing, so they kind of think that they can just do whatever they want to do, or whatever their agenda is within reason. So anyway, there were a couple of issues that were important to me as I got into the campaign. One thing that I found out was that La Center was never really in the running for any grant money. There was the Community Development Block Grant program that it's a federal program, but it gave money to small cities. It was funneled through Clark County, but for some reason, and I didn't start going to council meetings until I decided to run for mayor.
Okay.
And so as I would go to the council meetings, and I would hear this stuff that then Mayor Ed Siebler, he would tell the council that, well, you know, we were really close this time, but you know, we just didn't get the money, and it could be for a street or a sidewalk or whatever, but there was never an explanation as why isn't the center getting our share of this money? And so those types of things kind of interested me, and
So Ed Siebler was right before you as mayor?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and so those types of issues interested me, and I thought, you know, that's not right. We deserve our fair share too. Well, so then we had a couple candidates nights. The League of Women Voters put on a candidates night out at the middle school, and there were couple of other opportunities that we had to give our little spiels and that type of thing. And that was one of the things I focused on, was that you know, the center not getting our fair share, and I think we should, and blah blah, you know, just the normal. I didn't really know what I was talking about or anything, but I was willing to learn. But anyway, I wound up getting like 60% of the vote, or close to 60%. I thought it was a landslide, but anyway, and then when I won the election, I thought, oh my gosh, now what do I do? What do I do now? And but anyway, I learned, of course, all the mayors in the county are on the CDBG board of directors, and so I learned very quickly that success or failure in those grants is what your match is, what your matching funds are. And it can be money, it can be staff time, it can be all kinds of different things that count as matching funds. And Le Center wasn't coming up with enough match, whether it be value of the land they wanted to do something on or with, whether it was a park or that type of thing. And at that point in time, all the card revenue, or 98% of it, was put in a local government investment pool for projects. But there was never any projects because we never got any match. We never got any money, and we couldn't afford to do it all ourselves. And so when I finally figured that out, we started getting grant money, and because we upped our match. Sometimes we would match 50% because it was like, well, 50% of redoing Aspen Avenue, it's a lot of money, but the other 50% is free. I mean, we're not paying for the whole thing. And so we started getting money for sidewalks and road improvements, and I mean, we had sidewalks going everywhere. I mean, this little city didn't have many sidewalks for many years, but anyway, we started getting grant money so we could do some projects. I was very focused on sidewalks. I thought, any street that a child has to walk on to get to school should have a sidewalk, for the kids. And so we built a lot of sidewalks during my time as mayor. And one of the big issues that faced our community when I was elected was we didn't have any water. And we had, I think at that time, 3 wells, and 2 weren't working, and the other, we were pulling so much water out of it that we were doing what they call mining the aquifer, which meant that we were pulling water out faster than the aquifer could replenish the well. And we didn't have enough water in our reservoir. We had a big wooden reservoir up where those water tanks are now. There was a big wooden reservoir up there. And we didn't have enough water in that reservoir to fight a house fire.
Oh my.
If we had a house fire. Well, that's critical.
Yeah.
That is critical. And so the prior mayor and council had established an agreement with Clark Public Utilities to bring a water line from the Cherry Grove area toward Battleground to the city limits of Le Center. It was called an intertie, and they would tie into our system, and we would then get our water from CPU, and then our little system would be a backup system to that. Well, in the meantime, when I was told that we don't have enough water to fight a fire, I and Fire District 14 and workers from CPU, we hand glued 3,800 feet of 2-inch plastic water pipe and ran it from the reservoir, the old reservoir, up the hill past Southview, and this lady had an irrigation well, and CPU tested the well and the water and all this, and she agreed to let the city tap into her
Oh
well.
my gosh.
Yeah. And
Oh.
that, once we got that all hand glued and hooked in, then we began to start getting water from her well until the intertie was done. And so that was the first crisis that I guess it wasn't. I guess it could have been a
It could
crisis.
have been, yeah. One fire and you would have been out of luck.
Yeah, out of water. And so anyway, I think we were able to. I had a wonderful city council. We worked together very well. We didn't always agree, but we did some, I think, very very good things for the city. We built the Holly Park. I went up to Olympia and testified before they called it the IAC, Interagency something for outdoor recreation, and we got roughly a $500,000 grant from them to start and develop Holly Park, the ball fields and the park, and so we worked together on that and got that done. CPU helped us. And
Was that land donated, or did you have to buy that?
the city owned 7.5 acres, and we purchased 5 additional acres. Mr. Holly, I can't remember what his name is or first name was, but he gave us a good deal on the other 5 acres, which gave us 12.5 acres for the park. And in the meantime, we had Clark County Saddle Club had a corral out there, and they did horse stuff and whatnot. Well, that wasn't compatible with what we wanted for the park. We wanted ball fields for the kids and things like that, and so we had a terrible time with the Saddle Club because they didn't want to leave. And so we finally had to buy them out to get them to they put a price on what they had developed out there for their fences and corrals and stuff like that. So we bought them out so that we could have the park for the community, and not that they weren't an important part of us, but they weren't in the plan,
Right.
and so that was a pretty contentious time for this small community. And also when I first took office, and always prior to that, La Center was a town. It was not a city. And I wanted it to be a city. Town is okay, but city has in my mind, a more professional connotation. And I wanted to make us more attractive to people that either wanted to live here or have businesses here, or that type of thing. And so in order to do that, we had to have all of our ordinances codified into laws. And so we did that, and we got a designated, we're the city of La Center now. And so that was kind of a fun time for me because I thought it was important. And another big issue we had in 92 was the state legislature had just passed the Growth Management Act, which required all cities in Clark County to develop 20-year plans for growth. And we didn't have the money to, on our own, hire a planner to do that work for us. So we had to contract with the county, which we got a part-time planner from the county that I thought was kind of a conflict, because it was almost like the county fought us every step of the way. We wanted the La Center Junction in our 20-year growth plan. And the Clark County Commissioners, they just fought me every step of the way. And I remember Bussy Nutley was one of the county commissioners at the time. And sometime prior to that, not long before I was mayor, the city of La Center was or the town of La Center was considering unincorporating and just becoming a part of Clark County, because they had no money, they had no ability to take care of themselves. And I remember I'm arguing with the county commissioners about we need the junction, that's our future out there, and Bussy Nutley saying, you didn't even want your community not long ago, and now you expect us to give you something like that. I mean, that's the kind of battle I had.
Right.
And so anyway, it was only many years later that now they did finally give it to us in a 50-year plan. Well, okay, yeah, help us out here. And they gave Ridgefield land that Ridgefield didn't even ask for. I mean, they couldn't do enough for Ridgefield. Of course, John Mignano and Dave Sturdivant at the time, the other two county commissioners, they lived in Ridgefield.
Well, no wonder.
Yeah, so they got everything.
Yeah.
That's why Ridgefield is set up the way it is today, because they were helped big time. They fought La Center every step of the way. Now, it was only after many years later, and Jim was finally able to get the junction, or at least half of it, into our urban growth boundary. So anyway, at the time I was mayor, I was assigned to the Internal Affairs Unit at the Sheriff's Office. So I did internal investigations on staff, employees. And that's how I was able to function as the mayor, because I had a flexible schedule. I had to get permission from the sheriff to run for mayor. But anyway, he gave me permission. And then if I had meetings during the day, I could modify my schedule. I worked a lot of 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning at the sheriff's office doing interviews and typing reports and stuff like that. But I was able to function as mayor and an internal affairs investigator. But I wanted out of IA. I was just so tired of being an adversary toward your coworkers and whatnot. And I did it for 5.5 years, and I wanted out. And the only way I could get out was to go back into the jail. Well, if I went back into the jail, I was on a set schedule, 12-hour shifts. And my 4 years as mayor came up, and I had was finishing my 4th year, and I decided that I wasn't going to run again. And so I went back into the jail, and I think, if I remember right, Chuck Smith was elected mayor after that. And then his wife became ill, and I think he had to pull the plug. And then Liz, I actually asked Liz if she would consider that. And for just a short time, after I was mayor and I chose not to run, they had an opening on the city council, and I applied for the opening. and the city council selected me.
Okay.
So I sat on the council for, I don't know, maybe close to a year or something like that. And during that time, Chuck had to leave, or felt he had to leave, and so I was on the council, and I asked Liz if she would consider applying for the mayor position. She did, and we selected her. So that's how she got to be mayor the first time. And then she ran on her own and was was elected or whatever. And so
And so you stayed on the council?
for a short time. I don't think I was on the council for more than a year. I think what I went from day shift to night shift, and so I had 6 at night till 6 in the morning shifts, and with rotating days off, and so I'd have to miss a lot of meetings and stuff like that, and I couldn't participate in anything council wise that they might need somebody to be on a committee or something. I couldn't do that because I couldn't commit the time due to my schedule. So anyway, so I just resigned from the council when I went on night shift, and then for many years I continued to attend council meetings, but and then as the new hierarchy is taken over, I don't participate in the meetings. So I realize that having been in those chairs, that it's not always an easy job to have. And so I try not to be overly critical, whether I agree or I disagree. And unfortunately, at this point in time, I find myself disagreeing more than I agree. But I don't know if my opinion is actually the right opinion. I'm sure there's others that feel differently, but I don't like always hearing, well, the mayor said no. The mayor says we don't have the money. The mayor says, the mayor says, the mayor says. When the mayor spends money on what he wants to spend money on, but what I look at as community enhancement issues and things like that bring the community together and develop a sense of community. When those things are not a top priority, then that bothers me. And so to that extent, I'm not pleased with what is going on in our community at this point. Not to say that everybody was always pleased with what we were doing either. Another little sidelight I'll tell you as I'm rambling is that you notice when you walk into La Center or 4th Street Bar and Grill, all the little squares on the step that have people's names on them and whatnot. That was because of me.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, I actually it made me a little upset because we replaced all the sidewalks in front of the stores and the tavern and whatnot, and city paid for it. We didn't charge we never did any LIDs or local improvement districts that would charge each business or whatever certain amount of money based on their frontage or that type. We paid for it, and the citizens paid for it. And when we poured that new cement, a bunch of those yahoos at the tavern, they scratched and wrote and scribbled and whatnot, their names and
Oh.
you name it on our brand new cement.
Oh,
And I didn't appreciate that.
sure.
And so I don't remember how we dealt with that. But anyway, the tavern wound up selling those little bricks for people to put
Oh,
whatever
okay.
their names or whatever they put on there, to cover up the damage that they had done to our brand new cement.
Oh,
So that's
be
why that's there.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So
Huh.
anyway, so but my life is what it is at this point. I retired in 2006. We're lucky enough to have a home on one of the Hawaiian islands that we go to in the winter and spend the cold season there. And my sweet wife is retired and she's able to go and do and she volunteers, at Meals on Wheels and things like that, and she's interested in our community. And I remember when she first moved out here, I was living in the little house there, and she called it a shack out in the sticks. And but I couldn't get her out of the center now if I tried. She just loves it here. So it's our home, and we have good friends, and it's a good place to be. It's a good place to live, and so that's about it for me. Unless you can think of any
Okay,
other
no,
questions
that's
or
great. I've really appreciated your time and your stories. And as I do these interviews, I'm learning so much about our town.
yeah.
And so, no, it's great. And I really appreciate you doing this for
Well,
me.
you're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
All right, thanks.